future. This is the 21st century economy.
The transaction.
It snapped up nearly $1 billion of Bitcoin.
And the technology.
We need to build a digital Fort Knox. That gives people financial freedom, and that's a wonderful thing.
That's extraordinary.
We ride the wave that is Bitcoin.
Bloomberg Crypto, only on Bloomberg.
Middle East and Africa, vibrant resources and high-yield investment opportunities abound. Join me on Horizons Middle East and Africa for the stories, newsmakers, and insight from this exciting region. Now weekdays, only on Bloomberg.
Let's get a look at some of our other movers, the movers on our radar this morning. Freight stocks like Old Dominion and FedEx are plunging after Amazon's expanded its LTL freight offering to all destinations in the U.S. You can see Old Dominion freight line down more than 7%. Chewy shares were surging despite earnings missing estimates and cutting sales guidance. Well, now it seems that people have read through the story and the shares are down 5%. Cracker Barrel boosted its revenue guidance for the full year, beating the average analyst estimate. Wow, the stock is up 17%, which is a strong move for a stock like Cracker Barrel. Check on what's going on in markets right now ahead of the opening bell, just 4 minutes from here. S&P futures down 0.5% still. NASDAQ futures down about 0.9%. You can see the 10-year yield unchanged at 4.52, and Brent crude holding at $92.42 a barrel. We're about to start the trading day with Morgan Stanley's Mike Wilson. This is Bloomberg.
AI, some people would say that there's maybe a little bit of a bubble in AI. When you have companies with market caps of $5 trillion, you don't see any bubble there at all?
Whenever we have an acceleration in technology and people get excited about it, you have significant capital formation around new companies that are trying to capitalize on that opportunity. And we've seen this before through history, and you're seeing it now. It won't be a straight line. The opportunity set with AI is enormous. There will be winners and losers. And it's hard to pick the winners and losers now. And certainly a lot of the capital that's being deployed will not produce adequate returns. And a bunch of the capital that's being deployed will actually not produce any returns. But it's hard, it's hard to call the timing on these things. And the thing I'd point to just from a historical lens is in the fall of 1996, Alan Greenspan talked about irrational exuberance in stock markets, and the NASDAQ was at 1,300. And the NASDAQ peaked 3.5 years later over 5,000. So, these things can go on for a long time, but ultimately, there are adjustments, there will be drawdowns, there'll be rebalancing, and it's hard to call it because the technology trend in the investment is real.
The countdown is on. Everything you need to get the edge at the end of the market day. Get ahead of tomorrow's trading with the close. Weekdays on Bloomberg. Context changes everything. Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Moments away from the start of trading. This is Bloomberg Open Interest. I'm Matt Miller. We continue to see a sell-off, even though we've come back from lower levels this morning. We were down more than 1% in futures on the S&P. Now we're down 0.5%. We are off on the NASDAQ futures about 0.9%. Dow Jones futures down 0.5%.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can watch both versions on my website, the larger screen and the telemetry screen, depending on how you want to absorb the content. Thank you for joining. Please share the links and ask your social media to follow me so I can reach a larger audience to inform them on how to benefit from the news and also how to improve their health and wellness. You can subscribe to my Patreon channel and my Substack channel to help support the work that I do. All these videos are for free, so by being a paid member to Patreon and to Substack does help me to produce these videos. I greatly appreciate it if you help. You can also follow me on X, GETTR, TikTok, and you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. I have great products on my store, ebooks, supplements, and course material in immunology and pulmonology. Thank you for joining. The markets are open up right now in New York. The equity market is at 7,344. The VIX is at 20.97. I did mention 2 to 3 weeks ago that I was anticipating this roughly around the first week or so of June to have a spike in VIX. Well, we haven't. It started yesterday. I was expecting that the spike would get closer to 25 than 21, but it is what it is. Currency markets are relatively stable. The euro is trading at 115, Japanese yen is trading at 160.37. Bitcoin is trading at 61,820. Oil is trading at 89.48. This has been trending down, but it did go up a little bit because of the strikes from the United States. So the backstory is that the Iranians hit our Apache helicopter. Our Apache helicopter went down. The pilots were recovered safely, and Trump retaliated. So this little bit of a bump up in oil futures is due to this retaliation. Now, what's important is that it's trading at 89.53, which is below that 88. I'm sorry, it's above the 88 support level. Yesterday, it broke the support level, and I said that if it maintained the future price maintained below that support level of 88, then we'd have to readjust the trend range for oil future price. Well, because it's above the support level now of 88, we're going to maintain, and what's going on in the Middle East with the retaliations, I'm going to maintain at least the short term a trading range between 87 to about 94. But if we see a precipitous drop below 88 support level, then what I'm going to have to readjust that figure. It's probably going to be closer to like 82 or 84 to 88, something like that. But right now, 87 to 94 is the range that you should expect at this moment in time. Natural gas is trading at 3.216. It's trading a little bit higher because of what's been happening in the Middle East just recently with the United States retaliating. It's a little hot right now. If we go heavier in retaliation with Iran, I expect that we may see natural gas at 3.4. It's possible. But it's been wanting to go down. There's a trend of oil wanting to go down and natural gas wanting to go down. All right, but the risk, the headline risk, is the retaliation from the United States. All right, so that's covering the markets right now. Let's play, this was about 2 hours ago, clip from Live Now. US hits 20 targets inside Iran. Tehran threatens to retaliate. So this is the reason why I said that energy prices are somewhat moving upward relative to yesterday. Energy prices wanted to go down. Okay, but before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and support the work that I do by getting the great supplements that I offer. Omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular health. It brings down systemic inflammation and helps to control your lipid profile. Helps you to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So when you have less inflammation and a better lipid profile, you're producing less plaque. And when you have less plaque in your vascular system, you have better blood flow. And that's important for all your organ systems, including your brain. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Omega-3. Another great supplement that I offer, which is very important to take if you're 40 years of age or older, is Myotrol. Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans that will help you to build muscle. It helps with the gene expression to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take Myotrol, drink it with filtered water, and you'll be able to maintain muscle mass and build muscle mass. It's really important to reduce atrophy. Myotrol also helps to improve the health of your mitochondria. So you'll have more energy to maintain that muscle and build that muscle. Now, if you are an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from Myotrol also. You'll be able to do your workout and you'll be able to get the strength gains that you need for your sport. And this is important because for anti-aging or longevity protocols, we can learn from geriatric medicine and we can learn from sports medicine and take pieces of these two disciplines and apply it to how to slow down the aging process. That's why you should be taking Myotrol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and reduce atrophy. Super important. And we're going to go to Live Now.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base44, a complete AI creation platform.
Welcome back into Live Now from Fox. My name is Bowen Kadrovic, and we are keeping up with the latest with the ongoing developments over into the Middle East with those continuing conflicts there. We do have this exposed here, courtesy of the Associated Press. This says the U.S. military said Wednesday it had completed its airstrikes on Iran after an American helicopter crashed off Oman that it blamed on Tehran. Bringing you up now to a live look over Beirut, Lebanon, as we continue to follow the latest here. As President Donald Trump defended U.S. strikes against Iran Tuesday, calling the response very strong and very powerful after Tehran reportedly shot down a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. So we're just wanting to bring you some of the latest here on what we have when it comes to the ongoing developments that we're following. As the U.S. Central Command said late Tuesday that American forces completed strikes on Iranian air defense systems, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz. With that, we do want to bring in our expert now to talk the latest about this. Bill Raggio who is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bill, thank you as always for coming on the program. So, with Iran is responsible for shooting down a U.S. Apache helicopter Tuesday, and President Donald Trump claimed on Tuesday on Truth Social. Where does this leave us now to find a diplomatic solution, as now we see the U.S. now hitting 20 targets inside Iran?
Well, I don't think we're any closer or any further than we were the day prior to the helicopter being shot down. President Trump has been stating from the very beginning, since the active military operations, if you could call it that, halted in mid-April, that we are days from the ceasefire. We're now almost 2 months from that date. I think President Trump has set the expectations far too high for an agreement with Iran. The Iranians do not look to be cowed in this situation. They took a massive military hit, yet we have to look at the facts on the ground. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The Iranians are still willing to target shipping when they deem it necessary. They're still willing and capable of targeting neighboring countries and U.S. assets within the region. They still have drones. They have missiles that they launched at the Israelis. When I look at this, what I see is an Iranian regime that is stalling. They've successfully linked any type of agreement and this ceasefire with an end of hostilities between Israel and Lebanon, which is a massive mistake from the Trump administration, because that conflict will not end anytime soon. So all of this to me looks like a regime that is stalling for time. I believe they can outweigh the United States.
And then I do want to bring this in from U.S. Central Command. It says, forces completed self-defense strikes against Iran June 9th at the Commander-in-Chief's direction in response to yesterday's downing of a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. CENTCOM forces struck Iranian air defense, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz with precision munitions from U.S. Air Force and Navy fighter jets. The operation was a proportional response to recent attacks on U.S. forces and international commercial ships transiting regional waters. U.S. forces remain vigilant and postured to defend against unjustified Iranian aggression. And you said just here a moment ago that the Iranians the regime rather is really stalling. So when we hear about these ceasefires, have these ceasefires that have been implemented here over time have been effective in your analysis?
I think they've been completely ineffective. The ceasefire was supposed to open the Strait of Hormuz, and it hasn't. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The Iranians are not permitting ships to go through. The ships aren't going through because they believe that the Iranians can and will attack them if they attempt to navigate. So that to me right there shows the failure of this ceasefire. Now keep in mind, that's an active war. The United States is also conducting an active war, even though the Trump administration doesn't want to admit it. A blockade of a country is considered an active war. So I don't understand how we can have two nations committing active wars, and yet somehow we're in the and there is active firing near daily, and yet somehow we're in a ceasefire. So, in my estimation, it's a ceaseless fire. The firing does not cease. That's what I'm witnessing in Iran right now. I don't see a quick end to this conflict. The Trump administration needs to reconsider. It doesn't seem to want to escalate and return to that military force where it killed the head of the Iranian government. It decapitated many of its key leaders. Now they have been replaced. The Iranians, in my estimation, I want to reiterate that the military operation was a major success, but the ultimate goal of a military operation is to achieve a political outcome. And we haven't achieved that because I don't think this regime has suffered enough pain. They have to suffer more in order for the United States to get the Trump administration to get what it wants, which is, surrendering the nuclear program, ending support for the militias. Those two things are key, and we're not even talking about those things anymore. We're talking about reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So, long way of saying the we're far from a ceasefire. I don't believe that it was ever successfully implemented.
And then when talking about the demands that the Trump administration is looking for with Iran, like we said, to not pursue nuclear ambitions, are the Iranians ever going to agree to some of these non-negotiable terms laid out by the Trump administration?
I don't believe that this regime can agree to, particularly to the two key issues, right? Dismantling of the nuclear program and an end for support of these terror militias throughout the Middle East. That'd be Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, the bevy of Iraqi militias and other terror groups in the region. The regime has put nearly $1 trillion since its inception 47 years ago into these programs. It's defined itself by spreading its Islamic revolution. They do that outward with the militias, as well as creating that nuclear shield for the Iranians. That would be its nuclear program. If it bends on these two key issues, particularly via military force, then I don't believe the regime that its leadership can survive this. So I don't see how they can be convinced to surrender these two key aspects of its foreign policy, of its political and military programs. It's going to have to either be coerced to do so, which I think we saw the first round. That was not enough coercion. The military force that we applied, despite the Iranian Navy being on the bottom of the sea and major military infrastructure being destroyed, and key leadership being killed. Or, to me, the biggest failure I think that I've seen here is a failure in an inability to support a regime change here, right? If you want to ensure those things don't happen, you need to replace this regime. And there has not been an effective resistance inside of Iran. I'm not talking about protesters coming out in the street. I'm talking about an armed resistance that is willing and capable of overthrowing the Iranian regime. The Iranian people, in my estimation, do not seem to want to initiate a civil war. And you're not going to, in my estimation, this problem will not resolve itself until this regime is gone.
And then I did want to bring in this other expose that we have with the Associated Press. This says Kuwait says its air defenses are firing after Iran said it targeted the Mideast nation to retaliate over U.S. airstrikes. So when we see other countries like Kuwait say that they're firing air defenses as well, could we see possible other nations in the area start to get involved with this as well?
Cool any room in 90 seconds with this NASA-engineered affordable device. It's smaller than a toaster, cools any room in 90 seconds, and uses just a...
as well.
Well, I haven't seen the Kuwaitis launch offensive operations. The air defense missiles are attempts to shoot down the missiles that the Iranians are firing into Kuwait. Same thing with Bahrain, the UAE, the Saudis. All of these countries have come under fire. Even countries that are friendly or that have been friendly with the Iranians, the Qataris and the Omanis, have suffered missile attacks from the Iranians. Now, what we haven't seen them do, except for in some specific isolated incidences, there's been reports that the Saudis and the UAE have conducted some strikes on the Iranians in the past, but I think they've done this under the aegis of the U.S. and Israeli military operation, where those strikes couldn't really be sorted out, and they never claimed them publicly. So the Gulf countries are very unhappy with the Iranians, to put it mildly, but we haven't seen them launch their own coordinated and sustained military operations against the Iranians, and nor do I suspect they will, not unless they actually organize under the aegis of a U.S. operation, because the Trump administration, it's trying to restrain the Israelis in fighting Hezbollah and fighting the Iranians, right? President Trump didn't want the Israelis to respond to that missile strike over the weekend. So these Gulf countries, they're looking over their shoulder, and they're following the lead of the United States. I don't think they're going to get ahead of their skis on this one and start targeting Iran without U.S. support.
And I have this according to a Fox News report saying that the Islamic Republic of Iran has accelerated its execution of dissidents and activists, with the true number of victims likely obscured by the regime's internet censorship and blackout. And so when you hear about this with what the regime is doing with these protesters, is this not a humanitarian crisis? And should other entities, maybe like the United Nations, be more involved when it comes to hearing of things of this nature?
Yeah, in the perfect world, the answer is yes, but I think we've all witnessed the ineffectiveness of the United Nations. Keep in mind that Israel's involved in this conflict, so and the United Nations is typically, particularly when you have Russia and China on the Security Council, they're not going to approve a condemnation of the Iranians. We've had very little come out from the United Nations on the Iranians' repression of opposition, of protesters. The United Nations is very, very selective, shall we say, when it comes to condemning. Now, if it was the Israelis that happened to kill a handful of people, the UN would surely jump upon this to talk about, the horrors and the war crimes. But when the Iranians slaughter people in the tens of thousands, the United Nations is silent.
And then we do have this next post here real quick from Trey Yang, state Fox News correspondent, saying the Iranian foreign minister after the U.S. strikes tonight, saying, quote, "Our powerful armed forces will leave no attack or threat unanswered. Leave our region if you want to be safe." Now, seeing this quote and just in your analysis of where we're at now, and we know that with this conflict, this has really spiked energy prices for people across the world. Do you see a light at the end of the tunnel here with this conflict and with some of these quotes that we're hearing now?
The quote that we're seeing from the Iranian foreign minister, that is a key sign of defiance. Now, this could be bluster. That is certainly a possibility. But what I like to do when I analyze these situations is I match words with deeds. And we have seen defiance from the Iranians. The Iranians launching missiles at the Israelis because the Israelis are battling Hezbollah. I don't think anyone expected that to happen. We've been told by the U.S. military and the Trump administration that Iran's missile program has been destroyed. Certainly, it's been degraded. We can't, by how much percent? Is it 50? Is it 60? Is it 70%? I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is they are able to routinely launch missile strikes against their neighbors and against Israel. So to me, I see this as defiance from the Iranians, and it's a key indication that there isn't light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things, this blockade that the U.S. is implementing, we've been told by analysts that this could lead to the collapse of the Iranian regime. We're approaching 2 months of this blockade, and they said this quickly, and now we're approaching 2 months. We haven't seen the regime collapse. Are they under economic pressure from it? Certainly. But to me, a way out here for the Trump administration, and I think it would be a massive mistake and it would be a victory for the Iranians, but a way out of this situation would be to trade control of the Strait of Hormuz, or a true reopening of the Strait of Hormuz in exchange for an end to this blockade. That would not give the Trump administration the key wins that it's looking for, but it could be an out for this situation and an end to active hostilities.
Bill Rangio, thank you so much for coming on today. We always appreciate your time here.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Have a great day.
All right. Oil right now is trading at 89.79. It's moving up a little bit. It may hit the 90 level in the intraday trading, and natural gas is ticking up a little bit. It's at 3.224. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this stack. It's very powerful to slow down the aging process, boost up the immune system, boost up your endocrine system, help with brain function, help with cardiovascular. You can take them separately. That will benefit your body. But if you stack this the way I'm telling you to, there will be synergistic benefits. Ashwagandha root helps to control cortisol levels. Most people are too stressed out. They have elevated cortisol levels throughout the day, and cortisol brings down your immune system. Cortisol also erodes your different tissues. They age faster because of high levels of cortisol. You'll also notice that weight gain increases with cortisol, elevated cortisol levels. So what you want to do is to control the cortisol levels and try to de-stress your life. Take the ashwagandha root, bring down those cortisol levels. Also got ashwagandha root will help to control your blood glucose levels. High levels of glucose in your bloodstream causes inflammation and causes vascular problems. Lignans soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation, helps the immune system and the endocrine system. Turmeric brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. Again, helps all these different systems. Now you stack these together as a very powerful stack to help boost up your immune system, bring down inflammation so your tissues are healing, your endocrine system will improve, your glands will improve like your thyroid, and you'll notice that your brain function is improving because you have better blood flow. You'll have less plaque formation, so your cardiovascular system is better. And you'll notice over time that you're slowing down the aging process. It's a very powerful stack. Now, again, you can take them separately, but taking them together, you get the synergistic benefits. Ashwagandha root, lignans, and turmeric. It's the third pillar of my anti-aging protocol. Another great supplement that I offer is collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, your hair, and your nails, your musculature, your bone density, even your joints. By taking collagen every day, this is a month's supply, you're going to be able to improve those systems. And if you have joint issues, taking collagen and stacking it with the collagen is a very powerful way to remodel the joint. So please go to my store and get the collagen. The typical amino acid profile is shown on the screen here. This will help with your dermal layer for your skin. This stacks really well with vitamin C and magnesium. You take that supplement that I have on my store, take the collagen, drink filtered water, and cross-link and improve your dermal layer. It's really easy if you just pay attention. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. If you want to save some money, use discount 5 and you save $5. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right. Trump says Iran will pay the price.
Yeah, listen to this. That came out of Truth Social. President Trump posted. Truth Social, just one moment ago. Iran's military is a complete and total mess. Much of it, like their Navy and their Air Force, does not even exist anymore. They have been completely defeated. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price.
Wow. Jackie Heinrich joins us live from the White House with those details. Jackie.
A pretty ominous message from the president this morning, guys, and it comes on the heels of new reporting shedding some light on what the substance of the negotiations were before the U.S. was forced to respond to Iran's attack on an American Apache helicopter patrolling the Strait of Hormuz. According to the New York Times, the two sides were working on pretty detailed negotiations related to Iran's nuclear program. 4 big points there. First, a ban on enrichment for somewhere between the U.S. demand of 20 years and the Iranian counteroffer of 10. Also, a plan to dilute or downblend Iran's existing stockpile of 11 tons of near bomb-grade fuel. According to this report, it wasn't yet clear whether that would be shipped outside the country or downblended inside Iran, but the U.S. would be the only observer. Third, Iran was in talks to dismantle its 3 major nuclear sites that were severely degraded in Operation Midnight Hammer last year. And they were also discussing the need for snap inspections to ensure compliance. The Times writes, the result is what American officials describe as the hazy outlines of an accord, assuming the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and hardline Iranian politicians do not overrule Iran's chief negotiator, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, or torpedo the much more detailed talks that the United States has proposed to hold in Switzerland this summer. All that was upended after Israel and Iran exchanged fire on Sunday after a U.S. Army Apache gunship was shot off the coast of Oman. Its crew was rescued by an autonomous drone. Senate Democrats now raising the alarm over this.
The U.S. helicopter that went down over the strait is a stark reminder that every second Trump's disastrous war continues is another second that our troops remain in harm's way. Our service members are the best and the bravest in the world, and they deserve better than to risk their lives in a reckless, aimless war. The only sure way to protect our troops is to end this war as soon as possible.
Now, according to another report, the president still believes that a deal is possible and it's right on the horizon. One U.S. official telling Politico nothing changes where the deal stands right now. They also reiterated the U.S. response to Iran's attacks were proportional. But that message on Truth Social from the president this morning, casting a question mark over that with the phrasing too late. So we will look into that and get back to you guys.
Jackie, I'm wondering how much of that Truth Social post was about the response that Iran had to our response of them taking down the Apache. So he looks at they hit multiple bases. It doesn't look like they hit anything right now. We're waiting on Jordan's response, but it looks like Kuwait successfully knocked it down, and Bahrain, they might have been one hit. But maybe he just looked at that and said, okay. And as Mark Montgomery says, maybe it's going to go back to a 400 strike day again.
Could be. And, there's been some debate since all of this flared up over the weekend about whether the ceasefire is holding, what ceasefire actually means at this point. So still unclear whether this is a discussion about the peace talks or if those are still operating on one track while the U.S. response to Iran's attack is operating on another. But we'll be reaching out to White House officials here shortly to get some clarity on that.
Jackie, it seems like we're back to the original red line from the president, which is that anytime there's American blood. Now, we were blessed. Those pilots were able to go get them out of the water, but that could have been bad. And I get the sense that the president, that ticked him off.
Yeah, and he only has one choice in that situation, which is to defend his red line. I mean, the U.S. president has been pretty tolerant in letting these sort of pinprick attacks that we've seen over the course of this 8 or 9 week ceasefire at this point not derail sort of the broader philosophy that, in fact, it is a ceasefire. A ceasefire in that part of the world, as he said, is when you're shooting more moderately, but insisting that things are still on track and the ceasefire is holding. It sounds to me from reading this and how the U.S. side is framing it that that's how they want to proceed, making sure to reiterate that the U.S. response was proportional to Iran's attack and the deal is still on track, that the talks are still on track. We heard some reporting this morning from Trey Yanks that some negotiators, I think it was Qatari negotiators, are heading to Tehran to try to resolve the outstanding gaps. And so, with all that moving forward, that said, the president does need to defend his red line that he has insisted is there, which is you attack U.S. troops and, sort of that's the line there. And that's what the U.S. has done. The Truth Social post this morning, though, does need a little bit more fleshing out.
What's interesting is, so they shoot down our helicopter, so we fight back by attacking targets in Iran. Then they retaliate against our bases in Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait. So now it seems like, based on what happened after the helicopter, he would retaliate. Donald Trump would decide to do something to Iran, an attack. And what's different about this latest Truth Social, he said they've taken too long to negotiate and they will pay the price. It's a shift in focus, right, Jackie? Because in the past, it's been, if they don't come to the table, if they don't negotiate, then we will have to basically retaliate. But this one's saying they will pay the price now. It's not a maybe.
Yeah, and we've heard the president say all along that the Iranians are taking too long, and heard U.S. officials explain sort of why that delay exists, just the mechanics of getting an answer from the Iranians with the fractured regime that they have. The other part of that post, though, tells me that, you know, the president is still emphasizing that Iran's military, it has been, in many ways, the conventional apparatus has been obliterated. There are still, as we've heard from U.S. officials, you know, the drones, the types of munitions that are easy to manufacture that will continue to pose a problem, but pointing to the Navy being at the bottom of the sea, as he often points out. And so the question for military analysts is, what would it take to get Iran to believe that they are in a position of defeat, so that they can come to the negotiating table in earnest and, you know, agree to some of these things. But as the president and as some of these articles point out, there is a distinction between who the U.S. is negotiating with in the political realm, the foreign minister, for instance, and the IRGC, the council of advisors that surround the supreme leader, and just the messaging back and forth between them, and the risk that at any juncture over the course of those negotiations that it falls apart. So the president is expressing some impatience this morning, and, you know, we'll see what that means, guys.
Thanks, Jackie.
What do you think about him posting this and saying basically, just wait?
Well, I think the president was always going to get to this point.
Yes.
The reality is we were 2 weeks out from finishing a run.
You know, the problem is Trump thought he was going to be able to play super dealer and come up with an agreement and everything was going to be copacetic. The reality is that region doesn't understand anything but force. The Iranians are pretty smart people. They know how to play the game of kicking the can down the road and just stringing people along. Trump needs to win decisively, unconditional surrender with Iran. Iran needs to be completely destroyed. That's the only way this is going to end. This negotiation that maybe they'll downblend it and then maybe in 10 years they can start rebooting up their nuclear capability. It sounds like the plan that Barack Obama had. No, we take the nuclear material, they'll never have a nuclear weapon, and the IRGC is destroyed. No, Trump believes that he's going to be able to make a deal. Stupid. And he wasted 60 days of key importance of winning decisively on the battlefield, and he failed. Now, Congress wants him to pull back. He really can't engage lawfully with ground troops now because he ate the clock. So, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing. Trump failed on this. Trump had a perfect opportunity to destroy the IRGC, decapitate the theocratic regime, and to allow a true constitutional republic to be born from secularism in Iran. He failed. Trump failed.
There was a lot of public pressure, gas prices, some of the politicians wanted to talk about the midterms, some staffers wanted to talk about the midterms, and so the president left some targets that they already had to get a deal. He left some of the leaders because he thought he could negotiate with them. Yeah. These people have not acted in good faith.
They never will. They never will. He should have learned his lessons in history. They will never, ever, ever act in good faith. The best way to handle this is total destruction of their country. Now, Trump thinks he knows better. Trump thinks he knows better. You need ground troops to control the strait. That should have been deployed about 4 to 6 weeks into the operations. He should have deployed the airborne and the Marines. Take the beaches. Make sure that you control the strait. Create a perimeter that is 25 miles inland, to make sure we're controlling, and create a security bubble. Nope. Trump failed. because he thought that he could negotiate it. You know what it is? It's an example of a failed. It's an example of a failed construction project, but he puts lipstick on a pig to try to get investors to buy into it. That's exactly what happened here.
That was it for the president, and they still don't want to negotiate. So I think we will begin those operations again, and those targets that were already on the table before.
You know, what's interesting now is there's been mass hangings there of the people that rose up in January and February. But now, if this starts again, they have the internet. So they're able to interact and maybe work with and give intelligence to us in real time, because of the 90 million, they say, of the 90 million in Iran, 88 million, maybe 89, hate this regime. And for those people who say, well, they're fanatics. The Japanese were fanatics.
Right.
The Nazis are fanatics. Right. Think about what they represented. Mark Montgomery was on with us a while earlier and said, you know, politically, the president does not want to have to do it, but he thinks we're going in this direction. Watch.
At some point, this is going to probably escalate back up to full, to a full scale, like 400 strike day in the near future. If this back and forth keeps going, at some point you can't just keep doing proportionate strikes back and forth. If they continue to reach out and try to hit ships that are transiting through the Southern Scheme, which is what was going on last week, or they strike at our allied partners' bases, you know, in the Middle East, Kuwait, Bahrain, ones that are much harder to defend because of their proximity, than say Jordan, where we have a lot of warning. If that continues, at some point the president's going to have to do real cost imposition on them, and what's called a disproportionate or escalatory strike. But I think the president's trying hard not to do that.
I would say one last thing, because there's going to be a lot of talk after the president just released this. Who stopped the deal, right? And this past week, you've seen a lot of people talk that Israel is the one who stopped the deal because of their fight with a terrorist organization, not Lebanon, but Hezbollah, that is based in there. They're sponsored by the terrorists in Iran. You know now who stopped the deal. It's the IRGC who fired on our people. Those are the people that got in the way of the deal. The president continued to extend an olive branch, but if you're firing on our people, he has no choice now. So the BB fight and all of this, which is captured headlines, that's irrelevant now.
You hear a lot of people say he just needs to finish it. Like if we were really 2 weeks away from finishing the job. And
destroy the IRGC.
If they say ceasefire,
exactly.
We're gonna
this
negotiate.
idea.
Oh, no,
See,
we're not. They never come.
I'm telling you, Trump is fucked up because he thought that he can negotiate with people that the United States couldn't negotiate for the last 47 years. They're fanatics. They're fanatics in Iran. The problem is that they're smart fanatics. All right, Hezbollah and Hamas, not so smart, but they're fanatical. The Iranians are smart. And this is the reason why you have to destroy the IRGC and destroy the theocratic regime and not think that you can negotiate your way out of this. Because they have the ability to make weapons of mass destruction. Now, everyone's focused on nuclear, but what about biologic, which has lower barriers of entry? It doesn't cost as much. You can go more rogue with it. So this is the reason why the IRGC must be completely destroyed. You think we should have went into Germany during World War II and only have half of the Nazis destroyed, and so they can reconstitute? No. Do you think it was wise for the United States to do the restructuring in Japan, where they couldn't rise up as an empire again? Yeah. The United States had the right policy there. Trump overplayed his hand because he thought he was the master negotiator. But where are we at? We're at almost $90 a barrel still. We have inflation print at 4.2% year over year. Think about that. 4.2% is our inflation data today that came out. Well, wait a minute here. That means that in 1 year, your purchasing power has eroded by 4.2%. And he's winning. He's winning because he's a master negotiator. He should have destroyed Iran 4-6 weeks into the war. Instead of playing this game that he thought he was going to be the master negotiator. Trump's stupid with this.
The table, they can't even get along, the leadership. So we're watching them attack Israel, then Israel has to retaliate. They attacked our helicopter, we have to fight back, then they're attacking our bases in the Middle East. We can't sit back and just watch them do that.
Yeah, and they're not, Israel's not attacking Lebanon, it's attacking Hezbollah, which is the cancer inside Lebanon, that Lebanon would love the cancer to be disappear. Yep. So the thing that is taking place now is that the President of the United States is going to be looking at the 2 weeks worth of targets probably, and unless they rise up, he must have been picking up intelligence that shows they were no longer negotiating. So he said, okay, you're not going to negotiate. You're not convinced that the 13,000 plus strikes that we had and the 8,000 plus strikes that Israel have degraded you to the point where you're still saying that you're going to be the beast of the Middle East. That's not going to happen. So now we're going to see, because one thing they've done over the last few weeks, 8-9 weeks, is they brought their launchers out. They're digging them out. You know what they are now? Targets. Yeah. So now we're seeing how they react and what they've done and what the damage has done. We've been going to school with their satellites on what they still have. Right. And now we've actually brought more firepower, more sophisticated firepower to the area. And you don't think that Israel knows exactly where the new leadership is? They do.
Well, they've been watching them, and we know many of the new leadership, and the president spoke to this. He decided not to eliminate them, to negotiate with them. Well, now that they don't want to negotiate, I guarantee you they're back on that list that would be disseminated to the intelligence community. The last thing I'll say about this, Johnny Ratcliffe, who was probably one of the best CIA directors we ever had, they know these guys' movement. Working with the Mossad on a day-to-day basis, they have been standing by, just waiting for the president's orders. And it looks like they're going to probably get it pretty soon.
Well, you know,
it's about time.
Israel has the intelligence to do that. They took out the Ayatollah.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it. Just imagine if, he actually destroyed the IRGC, was able to retrieve the nuclear material 6 weeks into the war. I still don't understand why we didn't put ground troops on. Oh, he was afraid. Trump's afraid. Just like he was afraid to serve in Vietnam and had to get bone spurs, even though he can play golf. And I voted for him. I want him to succeed. He was the best option. But he's worried about the America First pacifists. He's worried about Congress because they don't have a backbone. They're all a bunch of jellyfish. But yet, a nuclearized Iran is unacceptable. Having a deal saying, in 10 years, maybe you can have nuclear weapons, that's unacceptable. Give us the nuclear material or we're going to take it from you. And in the process, we're going to kill you. That's the kind of president we need. Nope. He thinks he's going to be the master negotiator. It's failed. Totally failed. We were told early on into the conflict that in 3 weeks, everything's going to be done. Oh, we need another 3 weeks. Well, the clock has run out. Congress wants him to stop. And you have elevated energy prices now that has been proven in economic data to have caused inflation.
rest of the people. They picked out the part of the building where the leadership was. They went out of their way not to bring up the other part of the building.
Which is how precise they are.
Yeah, which was actually talked about by the foreign minister to a friendly press interview that he had over the weekend. And they must know, we know exactly where they are. The other thing they didn't do, 8 weeks ago, they said, there's going to be a ceasefire. They're going to open up the strait. There was a ceasefire. They never opened up the strait.
Right.
So right there, you're in violation, let alone what they've done.
They didn't open up the strait. Then we caught them mining the strait again.
Yeah.
So every part of this negotiation.
This is the point I'm making. Trump thinks that we're just 3 days away of negotiating a deal. But when you look at the whole arc of this, Iran always tries to buy time. Why does Trump allow them to buy time? Well, part of it's because we don't have enough missiles. We can't produce enough missiles. It takes us almost a year to make 100 Tomahawk missiles. It almost takes a year to make 100 Tomahawk missiles. But yet we can go through a whole battery of 97 on a frigate or a destroyer in one night. One night we can go through a full production year. That doesn't make any sense. How did the procurement managers over at the Pentagon allow that to happen? How? You should be able to make a Tomahawk missile every 90 seconds. Maybe give them the benefit of the doubt every 5 minutes. Think about that. 100 missiles for the Tomahawk missiles that are a major munition that we're using. They're 365 days. You only can make 100 of them. It's amazing. So every less than 4 days, they can make a missile. 4 days, one missile. Another 4 days, now you got 2 missiles. Another 4 days, you have 3 missiles. Do you see the problem here? When you had strikes of 400 a pop, now not every strike was using a Tomahawk, but there is a manufacturing problem in the United States, especially for our military-industrial complex. That's another reason why he was playing master negotiator, to be able to reload the batteries, because you can't load the missiles while you're in the sea. You have to go to port to reload. Stupid. So is our military really that strong? It can be very lethal, but only at a very short period of time. It can be extremely violent. It's like a sprinter. It's not a marathon runner. We don't have the endurance. Our military doesn't have the endurance. Our military has sprinting capability. And then we deplete very rapidly because we have an industrial complex that decided that it takes 4 days to make one missile. Stupid.
Then they do something different.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now.
Master negotiator, Trump. You still want him to be the president next go around? I don't think so. I have Trump fatigue now. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. C60, you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. You also can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. C60 is a very potent antioxidant, and it's a key pillar of my core protocol to slow down the aging process. Now, how it works is that it'll soak up free radicals. Take a teaspoon a day every day. You'll be able to absorb better C60 if you take it on an empty stomach in the morning. But take it every day. You'll notice that you recover after a workout quicker. You'll also notice that you'll have a more steady burn of energy throughout the day. You will notice that your tissues are starting to perform better after about 2 months. You'll notice that your immune system and your endocrine system is performing better. And what's happening is that you're soaking up free radicals and improving the health of the mitochondria so you have more ATP in your tissues and in your cells. You're bringing down inflammation in those tissues and those cells. So those organ systems are going to perform better. And when your organ systems are performing better and you're soaking up free radicals and you have more energy, you actually are slowing down the aging process. Because if you have high levels of free radicals, if you have high levels of inflammation, your body starts to break down and age faster. So you're slowing that down. Now at the vascular level, you're soaking up those free radicals and preventing the concentrations of oxidized LDL. When you're reducing oxidized LDL concentrations in your bloodstream, you're reducing plaque formation, so your cardiovascular system is better off. In addition, by soaking up free radicals at the neuron level, you're going to have positive neuroplasticity, so you're thinking better. You're going to have better memory. You're going to be able to sleep better. You'll have better cognition. You'll have more energy within the neuron because the mitochondria will be healthier to produce the ATP it needs to produce the neurotransmitters. So you get lots of benefits by taking C60. In addition, C60 helps the basal layer to improve your skin. That basal layer is where your new skin cells are produced. If the basal layer is diseased, is inflamed, has lots of free radicals, your skin will start to deteriorate fast. But if you improve the basal layer by taking C60 and resveratrol, you're going to improve the new cells that are being generated. And over time, your skin improves. And you will look younger. But it's not just about looking younger. You will be younger by soaking up free radicals. So please go to my store, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 10 years, every day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And let's just be honest, Trump has been failing. Inflation number, 4.2% year over year. Mostly due to energy. Oil is trading just below $90 a barrel right now. We were told three weeks in that the war was almost done. Okay, well, it's June 10th now. The war's not done. Trump failed. He's like a student that only does half of his homework and then hands it in and wants an A. All right, let's listen into Fareed Zakaria about what his take on Trump is and how the war is being conducted.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44. This is the first look at the...
He told Axios' Barak Ravid about his call with Benjamin Netanyahu when there was fire being exchanged again for the first time since March, since the ceasefire, between Israel and Iran yesterday. And Ravid says that Trump tells him, quote, "I said, BB, you better be careful or you will be on your own very soon." I'm just curious, Bree, because obviously Trump has seen the precipitous and shocking and unprecedented drop in the approval rating of Israel in the United States, and certainly of the Prime Minister of Israel. So he knows that it's a political winner to take on Bibi, Prime Minister Netanyahu right now. What's the reality of their relationship? Does that quote reflect it or not?
I don't think so. I think Trump was letting off steam. I think partly he reads the polls just like all of us. And he's frustrated because the war is not going the way either he or Prime Minister Netanyahu expected it to go. I mean, the real story there, or the way to read it is, Trump is furious that the war is going badly. It is not in any way fulfilling the.
I totally agree with Fareed Zakaria, Dr. Fareed Zakaria, who most of the time I don't agree with, but I agree with him on this. And the reason being is that Netanyahu and Trump thought that the IRGC was going to collapse early on in the war, and that the people would uprise and overthrow the IRGC. But what's happened is there are, 20, 30 factions within the IRGC, so they're more decentralized now. And the only way to solve this problem is to do ground offensive and destroy the IRGC. And if you do anything other than that, this is only kicking the can down the road, and Trump will be out of office, and this is going to become a bigger problem later down the road. And guess what? If the IRGC isn't destroyed, then that basically says that everywhere that there is freedom of navigation, there can be countries that decide to do tolls. And if you don't pay the toll in that strait, they're going to mine, or they're going to hit the tankers. And this is going to be a major problem in the Pacific, especially around the 9-dash line. So Trump just fucked up the 9-dash line. And what's the status of the international freedom of navigation? What's the maritime law now in the world? Trump fucked it up. Stupid. What's happening with this Strait of Hormuz is gonna cause a problem in the 9-dash line area.
That he thought he was going to achieve. Bibi Netanyahu sold him a big bill of goods that turned out to be phony. And so there is some frustration with Netanyahu, but I think it's mostly just frustration that they were going to remember the whole idea was they were going to cause regime change in Iran. The people of Iran were going to have a chance to finally be rid of this 47-year dictatorship.
Yeah, the sad thing is that the people within Iran weren't willing to overthrow the IRGC and take casualties. They weren't willing to do it. What does that sound familiar? South Vietnam against North Vietnam?
Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, in the months after June's attacks, they were like, Hamas has been destroyed, Hezbollah has been destroyed, the Iranians have been crippled, and yet look at the world we're in. The Iranians are in a pretty strong position in the Gulf. Hezbollah remains in Lebanon, and in fact, Bibi Netanyahu's war against it may have actually given it some support. And Hamas is still in Gaza.
And Iran, according to what we hear every once in a while from the Trump administration, their Navy is shutting things down, even though it's been at the bottom of the sea several times.
Right. I mean, the fundamental lesson here is there is only so much you can achieve with military power. If you look at that situation within Gaza, you have to have a political alternative. Palestinian leadership.
No. It depends on how much you use the military. If you use the military with the premise that it's unconditional surrender, then that is the political solution. Look at what happened with the Civil War in the United States. It was because Grant had this policy of unconditional surrender, not negotiated peace, not put down your arms and the Confederacy could, live in their own little world. It was unconditional surrender. And that's what we need here. But instead, what we have is we'll just use bombs. We'll threaten to use ground troops, but don't use them. And don't go all the way. going all the way was destroying their infrastructure. Trump was ready to do it and then decided not to because he always chickens out. Taco trade. Trump always chickens out.
To trust, and give, and that is legitimate to the Palestinians. In Hezbollah, you have to work with the Lebanese government and find a way with the Shia community to find somebody to. And with Iran, you actually have to have a plan that involves Iranians on the ground who are willing to do something about their. Just bombing and hoping has turned out not to be a strategy.
Right. Bombing and hoping is not a good strategy. Totally agree with Dr. Fareed Zakaria. But ground troops and controlling the strait and taking their oil and controlling their pipelines will choke them to death. And what did Grant do while he was moving towards operations against General Lee? He learned how to choke them to death, cutting off their supply, starving them. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. Total surrender, unconditionally. Nope, we're going to have a negotiated peace because we got master dealer from New York City, real estate development, aka Donald J. Trump. Fuck. This is never going to end. Never going to end. And it's only going to get worse for the American public because Trump failed on the battlefield.
To summarize it so well. Thank you so much, Fareed.
Barack, I know you reported that the U.S. was nearly pulled back into a full-scale war by the fighting between Israel and Iran over the past few days. How close did that actually get?
I think it got pretty close because the Israelis on Monday were planning a massive strike on Iran, wave of strikes that included more than 50 fighter jets that were supposed to fly to Iran and drop and launch airborne ballistic missiles towards many, many targets, including very sensitive ones that have to do with Iran's infrastructure. And I think that if that strike would have happened, there was the risk of escalating back into an all-out war was really great. And I think that was the point that President Trump basically shut it down by telling Netanyahu, that's it, you can't do that. And Netanyahu had to accept and told his generals that they have to abort mission. And one of the things President Trump told me yesterday that he told Netanyahu during their conversations over those dramatic 24 hours was that he needs to be careful because if he goes too far, he might find himself fighting Iran on his own.
We're negotiating now, and they want to make a very good deal. They're willing to give us everything. They're willing to give us no nuclear weapons. I think we are winning that battle, but you're really going to win it over the next 2 weeks.
Really?
When we declare.
Really? Prove it. What individual that is a legitimate negotiator for Iran said that? I don't believe what Trump's saying. I don't believe him at all in terms of what is being negotiated. I think he's lying, and I think he's doing it on purpose.
Okay, it'll be a total victory.
Bullshit.
If that sounds familiar, it's because it's not the first time the president has made promises about how quickly he expects to see significant progress in this war.
I think we're 2 or 3 weeks.
We'll leave.
Right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks.
Days?
I think so.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
This comes as the president had not one.
This show has been covering this regularly and how it's affecting the energy markets. And I'm telling you, Trump has failed. He's nowhere near having a good deal. So what does that mean? Either we're gonna leave the region with our tail between our legs and be in a situation that was worse off, than when we started, or we're going to have to put ground troops in and finish the job. And the longer he waits, the more baked in inflation will be permanently with your goods and services at a tune of 4.2% year over year.
Two phone calls in a matter of a couple of hours with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Sources say that before that second call, Israel was actually preparing for a significant attack on Tehran, but the intervention by the president appeared to have worked. As Prime Minister Netanyahu later announced afterward, Israel has halted its attacks on Iran for now. Joining me now is the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Leiter. And Ambassador, it's great to have you here. Why, in your view, was the president successful in getting the prime minister to call off these strikes?
Well, that's an assumption. First of all, it's very good to be with you, Caitlin. We hit Iran back very hard. Iran fired ballistic missiles into our country. No self-respecting country in the world would allow a malign country to fire ballistic missiles into its territory. They did. They could have killed hundreds. They could have caused mayhem and destruction. And it's very clear that we're going to respond. We did respond. We hit them back hard, and we'll do so again if they choose to fire ballistic missiles into our country.
Well, obviously, as you heard the prime minister, I mean, he did say earlier that Israel is stopping its attacks on Iran for now, but said he reserved the right to restart them. You heard the president say there he expects that they'll declare total victory in 2 weeks. Does Israel believe the United States and Iran are 2 weeks away from ending this war?
Well, we certainly hope so. The important thing is that the war ends in such a way where Iran can no longer threaten the region and threaten the world.
Oil now is trading at $90 a barrel. $90.16 to be exact. Still Trump's winning. Really?
This is a malevolent government that's been in power for 47 years and has destabilized the region and has caused mayhem upon all the countries in the area. If we get in this war where Iran no longer has a nuclear weapons program, no longer has a ballistic missile program that can hold the world hostage, and no longer supports its proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah, and if that can be achieved through negotiation and deal, then the war will be won, whether it's in 2 weeks or 2 hours. But we're hoping that that's the outcome. No longer to have this malevolent government coming out of Tehran, these madmen of Tehran who shoot ballistic missiles into their neighbors. This has to stop.
Well, I mean, in terms of what a deal.
Check out Directed by Takashi Miike, the new video from The Weeknd on YouTube, your one-stop shop for music.
Well, I mean, in terms of what a deal is going to look like, the president told the Financial Times that Netanyahu won't have any choice but to accept any deal that he strikes with Iran. He says, quote, "I call the shots, he doesn't." Is the president right?
Well, obviously the president of the United States calls the shots. But there's a wonderful relationship between the president and the prime minister. It goes back some 40 years. I'm privy to those conversations that the prime minister has with the president, and they are cordial and they're friendly. And look, we entered this war against Iran together, and I think we're going to end it together on the same page. We have pretty much aligned interests, and here and there are some differences of opinion that need to be ironed out, and they've done so in a very respectful and friendly way. We were hit with ballistic missiles. We had to respond. The president understood that. And the prime minister understood that the president has a much broader agenda in the context of his negotiations, and we don't want to get in the way of that. So both needs of both countries were tended to by a discussion between the two leaders. And I think that's the best way that a relationship and that a sense of camaraderie and leadership can be worked out.
I mean, the quotes coming out of those phone calls don't always seem very friendly, as you put it.
Well, Caitlin, drama sells. I understand that, particularly in the media. But, they've had hundreds of hours of conversations over the past year and a half. And, to cherry pick one expression, and after all, Caitlin, lovers do have spats, so they could have a little bit of a testy exchange, but that doesn't mean that the level of friendship, and look at the level of collaboration between our two countries. There's no other country in the world that flew shoulder to shoulder and wing to wing with the United States of America, but Israel. We've never asked for your boots on the ground. We fight our wars. And when the United States said, we need your help in fighting Iran, we were there. We didn't close our airspace to you like France or Spain. On the contrary, your planes are parked in Ben Gurion Airport right now. So yeah. We are a very close ally. We're a junior ally, but we're a model ally.
And I understand that you're a diplomat, but I mean, it's not just one or two quotes. I mean, the president himself told Barack Ravid that he warned Netanyahu, quote, "You better be careful or you'll be on your own very soon if you don't follow the orders and halt the strikes." So he was referencing to, obviously they reported earlier that he asked him what the F he was doing last week, saying that everyone hates you, everyone hates Israel because of this. I mean, are you saying that the president didn't say those things to the prime minister?
I wouldn't get too carried away with reports of one journalist or another who may have a particular agenda. The fact of the matter is, again, they've met 7 times in Washington, once in Jerusalem. They speak every other day, sometimes twice a day, and you don't have reports like that every day. So if there's a particular conversation that catches the attention of a particular reporter with an agenda, so be it. I wouldn't get carried away by it.
Rob Ravid's an excellent reporter, as you know.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator barley or the heirloom barley. What's the difference? Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Gladiator barley does all of that, plus helps to build muscle. So depends on what you want to do. Now, it's very important to take either one of these because you need to detoxify your body regularly, bring down that inflammation, and soak up those free radicals. And like I've been saying, by doing that, you're going to improve your immune system, your endocrine system, help with your joint health, help with your vascular system, and brain function. But you get that added benefit of muscle building if you take the Gladiator barley. Now, you can take it separately or you can stack it with the Boomer Boost. And by stacking Gladiator barley, Boomer Boost, or heirloom barley and Boomer Boost, you'll be able to help to control your A1C levels even more. Now, Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients, very comprehensive, and it'll help multiple systems. It'll help with your brain function, help with vascular system, help with your immune system and your endocrine system, boost up energy levels, help with musculature. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. This is super important to take, and you will feel the effects of this within 72 hours. You're gonna have a steady burn of energy, no spiking. With a steady burn of energy, you'll also notice that you're sleeping better. And by sleeping better and getting into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep, you're detoxifying your central nervous system and consolidating memory. If you have good sleep, you slow down the inflation, if you bring down the inflammation and you bring down those free radicals, you're going to be slowing down the aging process and improving mental clarity and that positive neuroplasticity. Super important. And by improving your cardiovascular system, you're getting better blood perfusion to your organ systems. And when your organ systems are performing better and better blood flow to your brain, guess what? Your brain, especially the hippocampus, will perform better. When your lungs are not inflamed, not disrupted, you're also helping with brain function. Why? When your lungs have inflammation, there will be a dilation of the vascular system around your alveoli, and certain materials will get into the bloodstream and cause further inflammation and dilation of the blood-brain barrier. And those particles and inflammation, pro-inflammatory cytokines, will get into the brain and cause inflammation. So by having poor pulmonary system can lead to early onset of dementia. Another thing that people don't realize is that kidney and lung health, or kidney and liver health, are also very important to help to detoxify the bloodstream. And if you have a lot of bad compounds and inflammation in pro-inflammatory cytokines that are in the bloodstream, it causes a blood-brain barrier issue and leads to inflammation in your brain that will lead to plaque formation. So having better health for your different tissues and your different organ systems will help that particular organ system, but also your brain. This is really important. Now, musculature, being able to help build muscle and maintain muscle, that's super important. You'll be able to have better posture. You'll have denser bone, especially when you do resistance training. And that will slow down the aging process. But building muscle, especially when you're older, will produce higher concentrations of myokines and BDNF that are neuroprotective. So by building muscle, you're actually helping your brain because you're producing compounds that actually are neuroprotective. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. This is super important to take if you want good health and slow down the aging process. And stack it. Stack it with either the Gladiator barley to enhance building muscle, or stack it with the heirloom barley. Please go to my store, blood-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video. All right, let's go over CNBC analysis of the consumer prices.
This brilliant little device keeps any room ice cold all summer and toasty warm all winter with zero installation, zero ductwork, and zero contract.
Inflation data may be interpreted more intensely due to what's going on in the Middle East, and the numbers are hitting the wires. Our May read on the consumer price index comes in exactly as expected, up 0.5%. As of now, I don't see a revision in the rearview mirror to up 0.6, but up 0.5, of course, would be the lightest since it was up 0.3 in February. We came in light. Jan and Feb were 0.2 and 0.3 respectively. It heated up after that. Now, if we look at core on a month-over-month basis, we are less than expected. Up 0.2, we're expecting up 0.3, and that is half of the rear view mirror, which was up 0.4. That equals where we were in Feb and March. To find a smaller number, you're going all the way back 1 year, basically, to May of last year. Now, let's look at the year-over-year perspective. 4.2 is the year-over-year. We were talking about that on the show earlier, Becky. 4.2 expected, that's what we received. However, that's not necessarily good news. It matched expectations because in the rearview mirror was 3.8%. 4.2 would be the warmest since April of 23. Now,
this is very important because 4.2 is too high. Remember, the target for the Federal Reserve is 2.0. Now they want to raise the target to 3.0. So it prevents the Federal Reserve from raising rates because of inflation. But the thing is your purchasing power will continue to erode. So Trump's policy in Iran, by not getting the job done, is baking in inflation.
In year-over-year, of course, probably the most important number, exactly as expected, 2.9. But once again, it's still hotter than last month's 2.8. 2.9 would be the warmest since 3% in September of last year. Quickly, the index that goes back to 1913 comes in at 335. Why do I mention that? Because it's another new all-time high. After 100 and X years, we are now continually almost on a month-over-month.
And think about 10-year bond, 4.5, 30-year bond, over 5. That's going to affect the mortgage prices and car loans. the yield curve is steepening at the tail end. You know, at the tail end, it's moving up. That's not good. That's not good for people that need to borrow money for a mortgage or for a car loan or for business. Trump's economy is faltering here. Now, again, I'm not a never Trumper. I voted for him 3 times. I'm glad he's president. But the thing is, I want him to go away. Fix the problems and shut up. No, instead you get bread and circus. What kind of bread and circus? He goes to Madison Square Gardens to watch basketball. He shouldn't have even showed up. He should have been focused on doing the things that he needs to do in the White House. And secondly, you get more bread and circus on the White House lawn with the UFC fight. Really? Now, I wasn't for Biden and his drag queen expose on the White House lawn either. But I want a president that acts like a president. He's not acting presidential. You don't have a UFC ring in the backyard of the White House. It's just not presidential. But it's bread and circus. And bread and circus keeps the masses pacified. As other things that you should be taking note of are happening, like inflation, like the Federal Reserve moving towards an expansionary policy with the monetary supply. You need to pay attention to the failure in the Middle East and how it may disrupt the energy markets, and not just the energy markets, food supply, because you need fertilizer. But you got UFC in the backyard of the White House. Bread and circus. What a great president.
This is moving up on the index. And if you look at the core index, same scenario, except for 336. This started in 57, once again a record. You know what? I think we need to also look at real average hourly earnings. Year over year, they came in -0.7. And the reason I'm looking at these, because last month we turned it negative at -0.3, first negative number since Feb of 23. Now this now becomes the most negative number also since Feb of 23, because that was -1.1. And if we look at year over year weekly average hourly earnings, same scenario. It turned negative last month at -0.2, first time since May of 23. Now it's even more negative at -0.4, which equals May of 23. To find a more negative number, you're in April of 23. So the inflation, of course, is affecting average hourly earnings both on a weekly and hourly basis. We want to make sure that earnings keep up with inflation. We don't necessarily want them to be much faster. We don't necessarily want to embed inflation in the wage component. That certainly doesn't seem to be happening here. Interest rates, they were really bouncing around a bit. 10-year briefly traded down to 451. It's back to 453, which it was pre-number, and that's up 1 basis point. Back to you.
It's a warning sign. The 4.2% year over year for consumer price is a warning sign of the failure in the Middle East. And if it continues, this failure, we're going to have problems. And then you have the Federal Reserve that doesn't want to raise rates and wants to change the target to 3%, meaning it gives them plausible deniability to just keep on printing and causing more inflation. You want a tight target, closer to 2. You raise the target to 3, then you're going to have 3.5, and they're going to say, well, maybe that's it's close to the target, but we're not going to do anything. Then you need to bring it down. Now, they have this argument that, well, the economy is growing, and this is just the standard inflation of a growing economy. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The average person is noticing that the cost of goods and services are too high. especially during the Biden administration. We literally need inflation to be below 2% to be able to slowly grow our economy out of that inflation. The money supply needs to tighten. And by tightening that money supply, yes, you're going to hurt the stock market. That's true. But the thing is that you're going to allow for the next economic cycle or next economic boom to take hold, because people will be able to have a less erosion of their purchasing power. And then over time, their assets are starting to grow. And then the next cycle begins. But raising the inflation target to 3 is crazy, because that's just saying it's okay to just continually erode the dollar. No, it's not okay. Housing costs are way out of the reach of most Americans. Look at a car. Look at the cost of just a middle of the road, brand new car or lease. You know, if you're going to buy it through a lease or purchase it outright. The cost of a mid-range vehicle is around 25% of a mortgage if you're going to buy it. A Bronco, which is not a luxury vehicle, is costing $80,000 to $100,000. That's too high. That's not a luxury car. So it's 25% or more of a mortgage, or the buying of a home. That's what is happening here. And this really accelerated during the COVID years. And so the only way to stay ahead of the process is to put money into the market, and the market will go up faster than inflation. So if you had $10,000 in cash, non-interest bearing, all right, and you have 4.2% inflation based on the read that we just had, then 4.2% of that $10,000 you'll have less purchasing power. Now, if you take that $10,000 and put it in the stock market will go up the 4.2% plus some. So you'll be growing, but some of that gain will be eroded by inflation. And this is the K-shaped economy in a nutshell. People that have assets can ride above the inflation, while people that don't have assets continually have purchasing power erosion. And Warsh wants to increase the target to 3%, which will hurt the bottom part of the K-shaped economy even more. Good going, Trump. Good going. Good going. Now, what it will help by trying to bring down rates and pumping up money, there's going to be hot flows for construction, for real estate development. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Manuka honey lozenges. They're made from structural nail silver or orange splash, which is fortified with vitamin C. And I also have in stock cherry flavor structural nail silver drops. Have some at home, have some at work. You never know when you need them. They're perfect for the allergy season, perfect for taking them prophylactically if you're cleaning in the house or in the yard to prevent an allergy. If you do start having allergies, take them, super important. You want to protect that oral pharynx. During the cold season, they work perfectly to help to neutralize. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nail silver lozenges and drops. I also have Max 35 in Cleanse and Max 14. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. Max 14 is 14 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day every day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow it. What this will do is neutralize, help the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, boost up your innate immune system. Super important. Now, if you're not feeling well because of the cold season or because of allergies, make sure you take a tablespoon and swish in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds, and swallow. And what this will do is help to reduce that, reduce allergies or reduce your exposure. Because as you're breathing in the allergen, especially let's say pollen, if you're allergic to pollen, you go outside and there's lots of pollen and you can start having runny nose or some sort of allergy issue, right? But if you maintain a good mucosal barrier for your oral pharynx, as you're breathing in the allergen into your nose or breathing in through your mouth and it's touching your oral pharynx and getting deeper into the lung, you'll have this allergic reaction. Your mast cells will be activated and create histamine and you'll have an allergic reaction. Well, by boosting up your innate immune system and neutralizing the allergen, you're going to be able to mitigate that issue. And that's the reason why you want to be taking the Max 35 Cleanse or Max 14. And make sure that you take the lozenges or the drops because you're creating a secretion that's protecting your oral pharynx. All right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And also another trick, if you get allergies because of pollen, take the structural nano silver gel and lightly coat your nostrils, and it'll help to create a barrier to and capture and neutralize to reduce or mitigate allergies. Okay, with that, let's listen into Al Jazeera.
Understanding and a deal will not sustain under what they call a current situation of military escalation and a severe strain from the military side. We have seen this message coming out of Tehran this morning from the spokesman of Foreign Ministry, Ismail Baqai. He said exactly that diplomacy does not take place in a vacuum and that a minimum of suitable conditions is needed for negotiation to move forward. And he added that he accused the United States of undermining the process through what Iran describes as a contradictory message and repeated violation of ceasefire. And he added that the military readiness and diplomatic path will not be separated from each other. They are seeing that is alignment between both aspects. And at the same time, he accused the military strain, the military escalation from the Israeli on the southern Lebanon. So the officials here are saying basically we will not surrender under this pressure. At the same time, we will show that deterrence and defiance when it comes to the escalation or the military escalation from the American side. And now we have this important line, actually. Qatari delegation currently in Tehran. It seems to there's a holding discussions with Iranian officials over the latest development, and this is the second time, or more than once since the beginning of this war, and we've seen that in the last memorandum of understanding that Qatar.
It's penalties, and you're cooking chili.
How did you get in here?
I crawled. Who could cook at a time like this, with hundreds of deals on Uber Eats?
An exchange of messages between both sides, and we have seen also a delegation from Iranian a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks ago in Qatar to help distribute that frozen assets and also the highly stockpile of enriched uranium. So there's a momentum, but at the same time, there's a military strain, there's a military escalation in the Strait of Hormuz, in the cities overlooking the Strait of Hormuz, adding to that the southern Lebanon and southern Dahia to Beirut.
Almadad Al-Ruhai joining us live from Tehran. Thank you. The military attacks between the US and Iran come despite a ceasefire being in effect. That was announced on April 8th, followed by a week of intensive diplomacy in Pakistan. Those talks collapsed, and on April 13th, the US announced a naval blockade on Iran in a bid to open the Strait of Hormuz. 10 days later, President Trump ordered the US Navy to destroy Iranian mine layers. Tensions steadily increased in the Strait, and by May 4th, it was tit-for-tat strikes that started after the US launched Operation Project Freedom. Iran retaliated, hitting the UAE for the first time since the ceasefire began. The strikes continued periodically throughout May, including direct combat exchanges over the waters of Hormuz. There's been an uptick in strikes since June. Every day for the last week, there have been attacks from Iran, Israel, or the United States. Meanwhile, the UN Nuclear Watchdog's governing board has passed a resolution demanding Iran report its uranium stockpile and let inspectors verify it. The resolution was submitted by the US, Britain, France, and Germany. 21 countries supported it, while 3, including Russia and China, were opposed. Iran's deputy foreign minister says the resolution serves to justify aggression against his country. All right, to discuss this further in studio with me, joining me now is Zayden Al-Kanani, founding director of the Arab Perspectives Institute. Zayden, thanks for your time. I want to talk to you about that IAEA resolution in a moment. But first, it appears we are still in a ceasefire. Do you think we will stay in a ceasefire?
I think the ceasefire will continue, and I think this doesn't indicate necessarily that the talks are over and the war will go back to how it was day one. But it certainly indicates that even if there were to be a deal in the near future, the continuation of the attacks, the continuation of the political pressures on a military perspective, but also on a political high-level perspective, will continue. And this goes back to the overarching conversation about will this war end where it is, or will it continue to impact the region in the long term?
What do you make of the US and Iranian responses that we have seen over the past 24 hours?
Well, from a US perspective, it's really interesting to see that the US is no longer a party in the war, but wants to reflect itself as the mediator that wants to end the war. This is a really quick transition from what we witnessed 3-4 months ago, where President Trump proclaimed.
I'm going to pivot over to Bloomberg's clip about SpaceX IPO. They were interviewing Ives, who is a major investor in AI and some of these up-and-coming companies and technologies.
Equity indices built on opinions? That's the old way. The new way is Bloomberg Equity Indices, built.
Analysts have went bush right in the following. While there will be some worries that the mammoth SpaceX will take away some oxygen from the tech semi-trade, this will be a short-term bump in the road. Dan joins us now for more. Dan, good morning.
Great to be here.
The appetite for this IPO. I think Lisa makes a fantastic point. A lot of people talking about the same thing, just trying to get ahead of the index inclusion, aren't they?
Look, I think that's definitely a play. And I think to say it's not would be wrong because of just a unique situation here from the indexing coming out of the gates. But look, at the end of the day, it does come down to it's viewed as a derivative of the AI revolution in terms of like how you're going to play space, data, AI. And look, this is it's a test for the market in terms of not just SpaceX, but the ripple effect across the rest of the pack. And I think that's what you're seeing. You're starting last week in terms of the sell-off that we've seen in semis. I think it's playing into just it's a little white knuckle moment that we're going through in tech, just to see how this is the reception ultimately is going to be.
But it's not just this. It's pushback to equity capital raises elsewhere. The report of maybe Meta doing the same thing. We've had another player this morning suggest they're going to do the same thing, pushback in the equity market. Do we have the space for these names?
Look, I believe you do. And I think even if you look like Google after the offering, the view that you were going to have a big sell-off, but instead I think actually took it pretty well in terms of the stocks. Look, it's $4 trillion that's going to be spent over the coming year. This is an arms race playing out. I don't care whether it's SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI, in terms of the capital raise that we're seeing. And I think these companies understand the demand's there. The difference is if we go back 6 months ago, it's like show the monetization. Is CapEx going to accelerate?
it's happening. And I think now that there's more of a green light, I think that just gives further confidence. I think investors now are able to see around the corner because we just saw like this weekend, like our Taiwan checks, like further just tighter supply, which is just more bullish for chips, more bullish for what we see, you know, across semis and obviously across memory.
That said, I mean, a lot of people can buy into the story and say this truly is a revolution, but say that the pricing is already pretty full, especially because as the supply becomes constrained, people are paying more and more for it, and they're raising debt that they have to pay back later with future revenues that go to that. At what point do you see that as having a viable argument?
Yeah, look, it all comes down to like monetization on the use cases, not just on the enterprise, but on the consumer side. Because look, you build it, will they come? So now it's all built, you see the demand there, but now it comes down to the next phase, and you gotta see in earnings. The big reason we saw the rally that we have, it goes back to like obviously the negative sentiment in March, but then you go through earnings in April and May. I mean, those were, you know, I think Jalen Brunson like in terms of what we saw in terms of numbers. Now it comes down to it's setting up for what I believe is going to be earnings over the coming quarters that will further support tech stocks. You know, we continue to think NASDAQ 30,000 in the next 6 months.
You talk about the consumer-facing side. You have to see it there. Does that mean that you like Chinese tech stocks better from the U.S. that's catering more to corporate?
Look, but it's also why I like in Cupertino what Apple's doing now, the start of at least having an adequate AI strategy, because on the consumer side, it will come and go through Apple. I continue to view them as a toll collector on the AI highway. Look, in China, robotics is where they're winning. And I think you cannot just view this market. It's not just the U.S. China, there's going to be a lot of winners, and we continue to view Alibaba and some others in terms of big tech in China, and where that continues to really be, I think, just starting the next phase.
Dan, speaking of China, what do you make of the U.S. looking at potentially nationalizing parts of these companies, similar to what China does?
Look, this is balancing act, and I think it speaks to like you're not going to see any sort of like what I do like nationalization, because the reality there is that it further, I think, stumps from a regulatory perspective. But
you do think you're going to see this or not?
I don't. So I don't think in the U.S. you're going to see national, but I do think you will see stakes just like Intel.
Well, how's that not nationalization?
Look, I think that's, you know, the problem is that a big part of where Intel is today, it's because of the investment that you saw from the Trump administration. Then it comes down to like, was that the right move? I'd argue in that situation, I mean, it was the right move because you can't have Intel basically being a blockbuster video of tech. But I think selectively they're going to take stakes in different companies because look, it is true. Like, in what's happening in China, that is an.
And let's talk about what we're buying. What happens to demand for the products that OpenAI and Anthropic are distributing right now when they start charging what it actually costs? What happens to demand? And what are we seeing already happen in C-suites around this country?
Look, I think you're gonna have to see the cost of tokenization continue to go down. You will see limits in terms of, you know, what we see on the caps in some companies. But I think it also is going to come down to like, as companies monetize that, and as they know that those dollars are being spent for revenue that's accelerating within these companies, that's where all of a sudden the two charts start to cross.
Where do you see revenue acceleration because of AI adoption? Where do you see that right now?
Well, I think it's already started happening in the data layer. I mean, if you look at Snowflake, you look at Datadog, you look at Innodata. So it just started off, it was just chips. Now data layer. Then it's going to be software. Oracle obviously is going to be key in terms of what we see from them. Hyperscalers, I continue to think, are not being factored in terms of the true monetization, like a Microsoft being
which
a
ones?
good example.
Microsoft and who else?
Look, I think Google. I mean, if I look at go back to like what's happened in Google, and a year ago, New York City cab drivers bearish in Alphabet. Now, what they're monetizing on hyperscaler, on search, on Gemini, narratives are very easy where those change. And I just think, I continue to think this is third inning, one out, relative to the AI game.
You're more confident on that NASDAQ call or the next game it's game 4?
Well, I think Knicks game 4, but ultimately, I do think Knicks in 5. NASDAQ 30.
So they win in San Antonio. They win in Texas.
I think they win in San Antonio.
Okay.
Maybe we should go.
I don't really care about the Knicks. I want to, let's see here. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer. I have probiotics that are very important for your gut biome. I have a powdered version and a VeggieCap version. Either one you should be taking every day. Drink it with filtered water. Now, what does a good probiotic do to your body? It's going to help to repopulate your gut so it's performing properly. Your immune system will improve, your skin will improve, your sleep pattern will improve. You'll be able to get rid of brain fog and you'll be able to concentrate better. You'll be able to consolidate memory because you're getting into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep because your gut biome is better. You're going to be reducing chances of getting food allergies because you're reducing the chances of leaky gut syndrome. Your metabolism will improve. You're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better. And your skin will improve. Good health starts at the gut. If you take a look at a patient that has a lot of problems with their gut, maybe motility issues, or maybe they may have a disease of some sort, you'll notice that they're aging much faster. Good health starts at the gut. So please go to my store, get the powdered version of the probiotic or the VeggieCap version. Another great supplement that I have is vitamin C and magnesium. Vitamin C and magnesium will help to boost up your immune system, help with the health of your skin. Vitamin C cross-links with collagen if you drink filtered water. So drink the filtered water, take the vitamin C and magnesium. The vitamin C will cross-link with the collagen powder that I have, and that will improve your dermal layer, and your skin will improve. Vitamin C and magnesium supplement will help with brain function. Magnesium is super important for brain function. Not enough people are taking magnesium. Another great supplement that I have on my store is magnesium and zinc. Take that, boost up the immune system, and help with brain function. Vitamin D3, dual purpose. It helps to get denser bone because it helps to absorb calcium. It helps with your cardiovascular health. It helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis because they're infected. That's why you want to take vitamin D3 during the cold season. And vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor. So your genes will express better with vitamin D3. Very important. And vitamin B complex is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. It will help to boost up the health of your mitochondria, produce more ATP, rev up your cellular metabolism, and protect neurons. So please go to my store and get the vitamin B complex. Let's listen in to Cash Jordan and how JFK Airport is being seized by illegals.
To try and go in or out of the country or wants to stay there because of that is going to leave, and that's the last thing.
New York, LA, and Chicago have just been put on notice because after nonstop rioting at the New York area ICE headquarters, Homeland Security is telling these lawless strongholds they're going to be domestic-only travel destinations unless they change, which the radicals running these places have promised not to do.
That's right. So keep in mind the Trump administration has all been opposed to the sanctuary cities, and now there's this effort to figure out a way to get cities to cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement, taking international away from the international airport.
We have to prioritize where we put federal employees because local law enforcement will protect their streets, not federal streets, city streets. So we're not going to halt the flights, but we're saying is we just won't be able to process them because we don't have officers there. We're actually going to pull out.
And not processing them essentially forces the airlines, not to mention international passengers, to avoid those airports.
These are major hubs, and there's no place to put these large jumbo jets without causing massive disruption.
Do you see having to take resources immediately? And that
If things, yes, that's right, Brian. If things don't change, we're going to have to make this step pretty quick.
So what do you do if it's your job?
YouTube Premium is ad-free YouTube and ad-free videos on the YouTube Kids app. So kids can bounce the Kids Bop without missing a beat. Try 1 month free.
So what do you do if it's your job to protect a country from lawless cities that have decided to rebel against immigration law? This might be it. And one of the few things still keeping these places on the map as they implode is the fact that they've got these large international airports. Take those away and what you're looking at here is the peaceful law enforcement response to lawless conditions proclaimed by radicals as somehow being great for America, when in reality, each fugitive harbored by a sanctuary city is just one more reason for criminals and gangs profiting off the U.S. border to try and stay in business. While the politicians behind this mayhem think it will carry them to victory in the U.S. midterm elections. Meanwhile, all these sanctuaries, what do they have to brag about? They're number one in home invasions, number one in gang activity, number one in public transit crime. In fact, there isn't a sanctuary city in America with an international airport accomplishing anything of note. Plus, these places are the most unaffordable cities you could possibly live, with apartments in New York breaking the $5,000 a month barrier for a tiny little shoebox. You can't even sit down. And that brings us to the real reason these airports are such an appealing battleground for a peaceful campaign to restore order by Homeland Security. You take away these international airports, anybody coming to these places to try and go in or out of the country or wants to stay there because of that is going to leave, and that's the last thing these sanctuaries want. And there's the money. JFK alone is responsible for around $36 billion in annual economic activity for the New York City area. And when combined with its sister airports, LaGuardia and Newark, we're talking almost $100 billion. That's going to completely disappear if something like this happens and these places don't get in line. Which brings up a big question. If you're a sanctuary city and it's your goal to help people break immigration laws, should you even have an international airport?
Some of these cities have international airports. If they're a sanctuary city, should they really be processing customs into their city? We're asking them to partner with us at the airport, but once they walk out of the airport, they're not going to enforce immigration policy.
Right, so you can have a plane that lands in JFK from anywhere on the planet, and people are going to walk off that plane, get checked into our country, and be on the streets of a city that wants to help them violate the terms they just agreed to. Isn't that wild? However, as you're about to see these sanctuary cities, they say they care about having an open border and that allegedly protecting people from ICE is a great thing, but that's not the real thing they care about at all. And fascinatingly, all of this came to light several weeks ago and then it disappeared. But now it's back because of what one sanctuary city just allowed to have happen. In fact, this is still going on. Watch this.
Anti-ICE protesters raging out of control, tensions boiling over outside the New Jersey detention center as Democratic lawmakers take their side against what they claim as inhumane conditions.
And those protesters are wearing Arafat scarves, the Palestinian scarf. So what is it really about? They're protesting against God, country, and family. They're protesting against the Enlightenment, and they're protesting against the constitutional republic. Let's call it spade a spade.
It is a problem on so many different levels. Ultimately, improved conditions is a need and a
This is Cory Booker from New Jersey. I think he's senator.
But overall, my concern is that facilities should not exist in my city, in my state.
ICE continues to blatantly lie about the conditions in all of these detention facilities.
This detention center must shut down.
So here we are in 2026, and last year we had the same people.
These detention centers wouldn't be up if the Democratic Party didn't allow for illegal immigration. So the Democratic Party made this problem. They created this problem. And it's all these Democrats talking about ICE needs to go. Well, maybe it's not ICE that needs to go. Maybe it's the illegal immigrant that needs to go.
In front of the same facility, saying all the same stuff, and Fox News went on a tour of that place. It's got a soccer field, it's got a gym, it's got a library, it's got a computer room, plus everybody being held in an ICE
detention facility is only there for one particular reason, and that reason is they do not want to self-deport. Everybody there could leave immediately if they would just tell DHS, yes, I am ready to go back to my home country. But people are allowed to stay there if they wish to fight the terms of their detainment and try to stay in the U.S., even if they're here without permission. They've got an entire tour of this place.
And the sad thing is, the nonprofits like Catholic Charities, like UJF, are supporting these illegals through taxpayer dollars that are being funded to these nonprofits. Let me rephrase that so that you understand. Nonprofits are getting taxpayer money to help support illegal immigration. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation, help the health of your gum line. It will neutralize, and with good oral hygiene, you're helping your cardiovascular health. There's no toothpaste better than this. This has no fluoride. No fluoride. Why? Because fluoride makes you stupid. All right? So please go to my store, get this structural nano silver toothpaste. Get a few tubes for your household. It's the best toothpaste that you can get. And structural nano silver gel. Structural nano silver gel is dual purpose. You can get it in the tube form or in the quick dispenser form called Renew. Use it the same way. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn to help to heal it quicker, about a third of the time. You can use it as a daily skincare to help the surface of your skin, the health of the surface of your skin. And during the cold season or the allergy season, you can lightly coat your nostrils and it'll stay active for 5.5 hours. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you have some at work or at home. It's very important. And Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into 3 cycles to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep to help to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. And when you have good sleep regularly, your cortisol levels will go down, your aging process will slow down, you'll improve the positive neuroplasticity of your brain and reduce the chances of early onset of dementia. People that don't get proper sleep regularly age faster and increase the chances of dementia. Please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. It behooves you to listen to me because the crisis that we went through in 2020, there are going to be many people, younger and older, that will get early onset of dementia. So you better pay attention to me because no one's more accurate.
Anyone can see what it looks like in here. It is not the miserable place lawmakers on one side of the aisle are claiming. But what about this idea that sanctuary city airport shutdowns are some form of retaliation against these places? Because that's the other angle being brought up here. Is that true, or is there a valid reason for this?
It absolutely does. This is what their base is all about, this extreme left base that is anti-police. You have Chuck Schumer, who's never had a job outside of politics in his entire adult life for 40 years, that just believes in this continued political theater, and they're stirring the pot, as I would say. And this right here is what's causing us to have to make decisions on prioritizing where we put federal officers. We called local police, we called state police multiple times. Listen, I know the law enforcement there would love to respond because of Governor Sherrill's behavior and what the governor is doing. He's not allowing public officers and state officers to respond. So since they won't respond and help protect the streets, because we're not saying protect our building, we're saying protect the streets, allow our employees to go in and out, allow these transfers to happen. If they're not on it, then we got to prioritize federal police officers, and that may affect international flights coming in and out of their airport. Because
wow, so if you have a place that is so corrupt and is so lawless that mobs are just everywhere and they are shutting down roadways and going after federal employees who are trying to get to work,
you're going to have to take federal employees who perform a security role from the closest location you can find them, which is over at the airport. You're going to have to bring them to that location to restore order so the federal government can function and can do its job. What a concept that people standing in front of this facility, calling it inhumane, even though it's not, do not understand and are not even willing to think about. This isn't revenge, this is just common sense, which would also dictate that housing dangerous criminals who've broken laws in your country is also a good idea. But no, that's not what the mobs want. They want everyone inside this place to be set free, which means that this is not revenge. This is just logical planning in the most efficient way possible. And guess who's really upset about that?
We're drawing up plans to halt international flights to anywhere the sanctuary cities, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. So no more international flights to those airports?
No, I wouldn't say all of them. I'm saying that when we have situations what's happening in New Jersey right now, when we have to prioritize where we put federal employees because local law enforcement won't help protect their streets, not federal streets, city streets, and keep them from barricading and causing harm to our employees, then we have to decide where we're going to prioritize our federal employees. So we're not going to halt the flights, but we're saying is we just won't be able to process them because we don't have officers there. We're going to pull out our Customs and Border Patrol officers that process these flights and put them in these facilities to help protect our employees coming out of work. By the way, and that's not their job. Their job is to do just what they said, Customs and Border Protection. However, since local law enforcement isn't able to do their job because they said, quote, they don't have the resources, well, we have to prioritize our resources as well.
Yep, that's right. This is forcing these local sanctuaries to get their own police who are being held back and who are not allowed to respond and tell them to go out on the streets and get rid of the radical voters who are out there just running rampant. These people are all over the place, and they had days where they could just interact with ICE until this ultimatum was thrown down at the feet of the governor, and she belatedly decided to call in reinforcements and restore order to this besieged community. And the other problem is if you're going to shut down an airport over lawlessness, that is going to destroy the local economy. And if the excuse for shutting down that airport is because the local leaders made the streets so dangerous the federal government had to step in and clean things up, well, whose fault is it going to be? You see, this backfired big time on these radical leaders who were out there screaming. They're not out there screaming anymore. They don't want these airports to be paralyzed and have it be their fault because it's their mobs that are all over the place and reinforcements have to come from the airport.
Now protesters are calling for more help.
All right, I'm going to pivot over to what Trump is saying in the White House right now. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. Resveratrol helps the basal layer of the skin, stacks really well with C60. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence, helps to soak up free radicals, and helps the health of your mitochondria so you have more energy. By taking resveratrol regularly, you're slowing down the aging process, especially when you stack it with C60. And super strong relief, this gives you temporary relief within 90 seconds of a sprain, pulled muscle, arthritis, or even a tension headache. Please go to my store and get the super strong relief. This works very fast and very effective. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's listen into Trump speaking in the Oval Office.
Very sad. But we're doing, we're fighting our way through it. We have made this a much, in fact, we've made it a country that, as you saw last month, they said we had the lowest murder rate that we've had in 125 years. Think of that. And that's despite the fact, because we got a lot out, but we do have more. We had 11,888 people come into our country who committed a murder. 50%, more than 50%, created more than one murder. Think of that. So you had people coming, I think seven murders. We allowed them into the country. Got most of them out. In the last 12 months, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted into the United States. We cut the flow of fentanyl across our border by almost 60%. Think of that. And by the way, coming in by sea, 97%. And we're looking for the 3% because we think they're among the bravest people. We cut them down, right? We cut it down 97%. And now I hate to tell this to Mexico, but we're now focused on coming in by land because the sea was tougher. A lot was coming in by sea, a much bigger percentage than anyone would know was safer. And then it used to be safe, not safe anymore. But with 97% down coming in by sea, by ocean, by water, and you see what happens to them, and they don't do it a second time. They used to have, they were totally unchecked. When they did capture somebody, they'd bring them in, they'd book them, and then let them go, and they'd go, and they'd be back on their boat the following night. So we're doing a great job in the last 12 months, and the numbers have changed in this country like nobody's ever seen before. But 0 illegal aliens have been admitted, and that's made by largely Democrat people. Those lists are made, and I find it hard to believe when I say 0. There must have been some, but they say 0, and it's very close to 0. It's hard to believe. You look, they used to have that certain areas on the other side of the wall. I built over 1,000 miles of wall. Without the wall, you couldn't. But I built over 1,000 miles of wall. We're building more now in certain areas where you need it. But nobody's ever seen a thing like this. They had plazas. We have thousands of people standing in those plazas. They actually made them out of concrete because the land was so disgusting and dirty, and it was so muddy and horrible. So they put massive concrete plazas on the other side for people to wait getting in. There's nobody on. There's nobody. They took a picture this morning. There was nobody on any of the plazas. There are 4 of them, big ones, where they come and stand by the thousands. There was nobody on the plaza, so it's really amazing. I want to speak about it in my speeches. I made a speech last week, which is really wonderful. Wisconsin. And I want to speak about the great job I've done on the border. And my people said, "Sir, nobody cares about that." I said, "What do you mean?" I got elected on that twice, actually, because I got elected the first time in 2016. And after I left, it became horrible. Second time was far worse. What it was in 2024, it was so bad, far worse than 2016. 2016 was like a pleasure trip by comparison to what it became. It became worse in the history of the world. I don't think there's ever been a war where 25 million people came across, all unchecked and unvetted. We can never let that happen. We can never let that happen. What happened to our country again? Because no country can stand it. No country could have withstood what these people. We had a border czar who never saw the border. We had a border czar who never once the people that were giving good paychecks to. They never called up ICE. They never called up the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal people, by the way. She never once called them. She was the border czar for 4 years, almost 4 years, and she never went to the border. And she never called up. I used to call them all the time. Paul, Brandon, I used to call them all the time and say, "Hi, how we doing on the border?" "Sir, we're doing okay." But they're great people, amazing people. She never called them. We had the worst border, I think, of any country in history. No third world country would allow people to come into their country like that. So the bill provides crucial funding for domestic law enforcement investigations and combating child exploitation, continuing our work to restore law and order across our nation and to protect America's youth. We're so proud. We're so proud of Washington, D.C. and the National Guard, the job they've done. And we worked with the Washington, the Capitol Policing. They're great people. I've gotten to know so many of them. Very simply, the radical left Democrats. And I'm going to use that term a lot because they're dumb. I mean, who wants open borders? Who wants transgender mutilization of your child? Who wants that? Who wants men playing in women's sports? They're dumb. They're Democrats. They have the worst policy of anybody. I watched that thug that's up in Maine. He's a thug. And they're trying to make excuses for him. I mean, he's worse than any human being that's ever run for office, probably. I don't know. I don't want to say bad, but I just look. I mean, nobody's ever had a record like that. And you'll have Schumer. He goes crazy over this or that, or Epstein. this guy, why are they talking about it? He said, well, we don't know, but this guy's got a rap sheet. I've never seen anything like it. He's a thug. I know thugs. I had to deal with thugs. I built a lot of buildings. I dealt with the toughest people on earth. I dealt with worse than thugs. This guy's a thug. He's a low-level thug. And he's running to be a senator to work with Eric Schmidt. Eric will have him. I think it was to deal with Barrasso. What the hell do we have to do with Rand? Now, Rand would be very interesting, but Rand would figure it out, put him away. But this is a thug. He's a cheap, no good person. And I watch these senators, the Democrats, and well, we don't really know. You do know. He's as bad. I've never seen a person like that run for office. And the guy from Texas, different, but he's terrible too. He's terrible. These are radical left communists. But I watched this guy this morning, and he was so bad. He was so bad. He's a bad guy. Just a bad guy. He must be laughing up his sleeve when he looks at these idiots going like Schumer. Well, he's okay. He's okay. He's not okay. Can you imagine if the Republicans had him? Oh my God. If we had him, Judge? So, well, I really believe it. If it meant losing the Senate, you would not let that happen. That's just a terrible thing. I mean, I watch it happening. It's unfolding. It's really history because there's never been a guy like that that's ever run for office. At any level. I don't think at any level. And the excuses, they come up every day. Somebody comes forward with really proven stuff. Even his business, he's not a businessman at all. His parents supported him. The guy's a loser. Other than that, he might be very nice. But very simply, the radical left Democrats, and I look forward to the day when I don't call them Democrats anymore. And I won't if they do their job. If they want to stop crime, if they want to lower taxes, if they want to do the education, the good things. There's so many things we can do together. I look forward to the day.
He's just rambling. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the collagen. Collagen will help to remodel your joints, bring down inflammation, reduce the pain by blocking the pain gatekeeper called NAV 1.7. And by taking this every day and doing some exercises where you're opening up the joint up to the point of pain and go just a little bit more, count to about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, do that 2 or 3 times, do that every day, and you will notice that you'll be able to open up the joint more. This is perfect for arthritis or for a sports injury. Take it every day, and you'll notice that you're slowly remodeling the joint and improving your articulation of the joint. So please go to my store, get the collagen, stack with the collagen to supercharge the remodeling process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please help support the work that I do by sharing the links and asking your social media to follow me. And if you like the content that I produce, this is all for free. Please be a paid member to my Patreon or my Substack channel. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.